I stared at the framed photo of our perfect little family, wondering how long it would take them to destroy everything we'd built. My fingers traced the edge of the frame, remembering the day we took that picture at Mason's high school graduation. Just me, Tom, and our boy. Complete, content, uncomplicated. The phone call changed everything. "They've lost it all, Nicole." Tom's voice cracked as he paced our kitchen. "The house, the investments, everything. Dad's business partners cleaned them out." I set down my coffee mug harder than necessary. "And they need somewhere to stay." The silence stretched between us like a rubber band about to snap. I knew that look on his face, the guilt, the obligation, the unspoken plea. 20 years of marriage had taught me to read every micro-expression. "No." The word came out sharp, definitive. "They're my parents, Nicole. Your parents who didn't come to our wedding because I wasn't their kind of people, who've never once visited Mason at college." My laugh felt bitter in my throat. "Those parents." Tom slumped against the counter. "They've changed. Dad's broken. Mom's scared. They've got nowhere else to go." I thought of our peaceful mornings, our quiet evenings, our freedom to just be, all of it about to be invaded by Walter's ego and Margaret's endless criticism. "We have a one-bedroom guest room. It's enough. They won't stay long, just until they get back on their feet." The lie hung between us, heavy and obvious. We both knew better. Walter and Margaret wouldn't just get back on their feet. They'd dig in their designer heels and poison our home with their entitled expectations. "Mason comes home for summer break in 2 months," I reminded him. "We'll figure it out." Tom reached for my hand. "Please, Nicole, I can't turn them away." I pulled back, crossing my arms. "Like they turned us away when Mason was sick and we needed help with the medical bills? That was different." "Different how?" "Because they had money then. Because they could have helped but chose not to." The memories burned fresh. Sleepless nights counting pennies, working double shifts at the library, Tom taking extra repair jobs until he could barely stand. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Tom checked his phone, face paling. "They're here already." "What?" I moved to the window, pulling back the curtain. There they stood on our front porch, Walter in his rumpled designer suit, Margaret clutching her Hermès bag like a life preserver. Between them sat a large wooden chest, ornate and obviously expensive. "You invited them without asking me first?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. "I couldn't just leave them hanging, like they left us hanging for 20 years?" I turned to face him, ice spreading through my veins. "You know what this means, don't you? They'll take over everything. They'll try to run our lives, criticize our choices, make us feel small in our own home." The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. "Nicole, please." I looked at my husband, this good man torn between loyalty to his parents and loyalty to me. Part of me wanted to stand firm, to protect what we'd built. But another part, a darker part, whispered of opportunity, of karma, of revenge, served not cold, but at a slow simmer. "Fine." I straightened my spine, smoothed my expression. "Let them in. But remember this moment, Tom. Remember, I tried to warn you." I watched him hurry to the door, already shifting into the dutiful sun. As Walter and Margaret's voices filled our entryway, I touched the family photo one last time. Game on. 3 days. That's all it took for Margaret to rearrange my kitchen, criticize my parenting, and turn my sanctuary into her personal stage for passive-aggressive theater. I stood at the counter, watching her reorganize my spice rack for the 3rd time. The alphabetical system worked fine for 15 years. "Oh, darling." She smiled that razor-thin smile. "Organization by cuisine is so much more sophisticated. Though I suppose you wouldn't have learned that in your circumstances." My fingers tightened around my coffee mug. The morning light caught the mysterious chest they'd brought, still sitting untouched in the corner of our living room. Walter guarded it like a dragon's hoard, changing the subject whenever anyone asked about its contents. Tom walked in, already in his work coveralls, Margaret's nose wrinkled slightly at the grease stains. Thomas, dear, have you considered what we discussed about returning to college? I froze. This was news to me. Mom, I've told you. I'm happy being a mechanic. Tom grabbed his lunch from the fridge, avoiding my eyes. But you had such potential in business school before you dropped out to marry. She caught herself, but the implication hung in the air like smoke. To marry me, I finished. Say it, Margaret. Walter chose that moment to emerge from the guest room, newspaper tucked under his arm. The market's showing signs of recovery. If I could just access my old contacts. Your contacts who helped bankrupt you. The words slipped out before I could stop them. The room went silent. Walter's face darkened. You don't understand business, Nicole. Sometimes calculated risks. Calculate your way into our guest room. I set down my mug. Speaking of which, when do you plan to contribute to household expenses? Nicole, Tom warned. No, it's a fair question. Walter straightened his shoulders, a ghost of his former authority. We'll contribute once I've sorted through some opportunities. Opportunities in that chest you won't talk about? Margaret gasped. How dare you? After we've been nothing but grateful guests, I laughed, sharp and hollow. Grateful? You've spent 3 days criticizing everything from my cooking to my career. You've rearranged my home without asking. Now you're pushing Tom to abandon his job. I'm trying to help him reach his potential. Margaret's voice rose. Instead of wasting his life fixing cars like some common, that waste of life paid for your grandson's college education. I cut in. While you and Walter were too busy with your country club memberships to even attend his high school graduation. Tom slammed his lunchbox down. Enough, both of you. Thomas, Margaret reached for him, tears welling. We only want what's best. I need to get to work. He headed for the door, pausing only to kiss my cheek. The gesture felt mechanical, distant. After he left, Walter cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss establishing some household guidelines. Here's a guideline, I said, turning to face them both. That chest, either tell me what's in it, or it goes to the garage. This isn't a storage facility. Walter's hand twitched toward his pocket, where, I noticed, he kept a small key on a chain. The contents are private business matters. Surely you understand. What I understand is that you're hiding something. In my home, around my family. Margaret stepped between us. We've obviously overstayed our welcome this morning. Walter, let's give Nicole some space to compose herself. They retreated to the guest room, Margaret shooting me a look that could freeze hell. I waited until their door closed, then pulled out my phone to text Eleanor, my grandmother. If anyone could help me navigate this mess, it was her. Need advice, I typed. In-laws from hell have moved in, bringing mysterious locked chest and years of resentment. How do I protect my family without becoming the villain they already think I am? Her response came quickly. Sometimes the best revenge is letting people reveal themselves. Watch, wait, document everything. Love you, dear. I looked at the chest again, noticing for the first time a small company logo etched into its corner. Something about it seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it. Yet, Eleanor was right. I'd watch, I'd wait, and I'd find out exactly what Walter and Margaret were hiding, even if it meant becoming the villain they always claimed I was. The bank statement lay on my desk like a loaded gun. I'd found it while cleaning, tucked beneath Margaret's designer handbag, forgotten or deliberately left where I'd see it. The numbers jumped out at me. Mason's college fund, accessed 3 times in the past week. My hands shook as I dialed Tom's number, straight to voicemail. Of course, I heard Margaret's laugh floating up from downstairs, that practice society titter that set my teeth on edge. When I reached the kitchen, she was showing Walter something on her phone, both of them dressed for dinner out, while dirty dishes filled my sink. Care to explain this? I slapped the bank statement on the counter. Margaret's smile didn't waver. Oh, that. Thomas agreed we could borrow a small amount for some essential expenses. Essential? The word tasted like poison. You mean the spa day you charged last Tuesday? Or the golf club membership renewal? Walter shifted uncomfortably. Now, Nicole. We've discussed repaying everything once my new venture. That's my son's future you're gambling with. My voice came out steady, deadly calm. The money we scraped together while you were too ashamed of our common lifestyle to even visit. Mason has a trust fund from us, Margaret waved dismissively. Once Walter's business. What business? The one that bankrupted you? Or the secret one hiding in that chest you won't talk about? The front door opened. Tom walked in, still in his work clothes, freezing when he saw us. What's going on? Your wife is making accusations. Margaret's voice trembled perfectly. After all we've sacrificed. Sacrificed, I grabbed the statement, thrust it at Tom. They're draining Mason's college fund, and you gave them access. Tom's face went pale. I only authorized one small withdrawal for what? I stepped closer. What was so important that you'd risk our son's education without even discussing it with me? Son, Walter cut in. We had an opportunity that required immediate. Stop. I turned to face them both. No more opportunities. No more sacrifices. No more treating our family's future like your personal piggy bank. Margaret's facade cracked. How dare you speak to us this way? Thomas, are you going to let her? Let me what? Protect our son. Someone has to, since his grandparents are too busy trying to maintain their country club lifestyle to care about his future. That's enough. Tom's voice was sharp. Mom, Dad, you promised this was a one-time thing. It was necessary, Walter insisted. The contacts in that chest, the documents, they're worth millions. We just needed startup capital. I laughed, harsh and bitter. So that's what's in the mystery chest. More get-rich-quick schemes? You don't understand business, Margaret snapped. Of course, working in a library. Get out. The words surprised even me. The room went silent. Nicole, Tom started. No, they leave, or I do. And I'm taking Mason's remaining money with me. Margaret clutched Walter's arm. Thomas, surely you won't let her. Won't let me protect my son. I turned to Tom. Choose, right now, your parents' schemes or your son's future. Tom looked between us, trapped. We can't just throw them out. Fine. I grabbed my keys. I'll be at Eleanor's. Call me when they're gone, or when you remember who you built this family with. Nicole, wait, but I was already moving. Past the precious chest, past Margaret's tears, past 20 years of trying to prove myself worthy of their precious son. At the door, I paused. You know what's funny? I actually believed you'd changed. That losing everything might have taught you something about family, about what really matters. I met Walter's eyes. I was wrong. You're still the same entitled, selfish people who thought their son married beneath him. Only now you're trying to drag us down with you. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with messages. I ignored them all, except one, from Eleanor. Remember, dear, sometimes the strongest revenge is simply standing your ground. Are you ready for dinner? I made your favorite pie. I smiled through tears, turning toward the nursing home. Let them scramble. Let them panic. Sometimes the best way to win was to simply walk away and let the truth do its work. But first, I had some research to do about Walter's old company and that mysterious chest's logo. Something told me there was more to this story than failed business ventures and wounded pride. Eleanor's nursing home computer hummed as I scrolled through archived newspaper articles. 3 days of research had led me here, piecing together Walter's past like a jigsaw puzzle of lies. Found something interesting? Eleanor wheeled closer, setting down 2 cups of contraband coffee she'd smuggled from the staff room. Walter's company didn't just go bankrupt. I turned the screen toward her. They were under investigation for investor fraud when everything collapsed. Look at the date, exactly when they stopped speaking to us. The mighty do fall hard, Eleanor mused. But that doesn't explain why you're here at midnight instead of fixing things with Tom. My phone buzzed. Another message from him. I ignored it. That chest they brought? The logo matches a subsidiary company that vanished right before the investigation. I think a notification popped up on my screen. Motion detected on our home security camera. The timestamp read 2:17 a.m. The footage showed Walter in our driveway, struggling with the chest, loading it into his car. Son of a language, Eleanor warned, but she was already grabbing her keys. I'll drive. The ride home was silent, except for Eleanor's humming. Some old war song about victory. We pulled up just as Walter was closing his trunk. Going somewhere? I stepped out of Eleanor's car, making him jump. Nicole. He straightened, trying to reclaim his authority. This doesn't concern you. The fraud investigation concerned me. The investors you cheated concerned me. And that chest, which I'm betting contains evidence that would interest a lot of people, definitely concerns me. Walter's face went ash white. How did you? I'm a librarian, Walter. Research is what I do. I moved closer. Were you planning to rebuild your empire with stolen money? Is that why you needed Mason's college fund? You don't understand. His hands shook as he reached for his car door. Those investors, they were going to what? Expose you. Press charges. Is that why you and Margaret cut us off? Afraid we'd learn your perfect life was built on lies. Headlights swept across us as another car pulled up. Tom stepped out, still in his work clothes, looking between us with dawning comprehension. Dad, what are you doing? Your father, Eleanor called from her car, is running away with evidence of his crimes. Again. Some people never learn new tricks. Walter's composure cracked. Thomas, son, I can explain. Like you explained when you needed Mason's money. Tom's voice was quiet, dangerous. What's in the chest, Dad? Nothing that. The truth, I cut in. For once in your life, Walter, tell the truth, or I call the police and let them find out. The silence stretched, broken only by Eleanor's engine idling. Finally, Walter slumped against his car. Documents, proof of, arrangements. If I could just get them to the right people, restore our position. By stealing from your grandson. Tom moved to stand beside me. That's what the college fund was for, to buy your way back into your old life. We deserved that life. Margaret's voice made us all turn. She stood in the doorway, elegant, even in her robe. We were somebody before. Before your lies caught up with you, I finished. Before you had to face consequences. Tom pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police. Wait. Walter's voice cracked. Please, I'll leave. Take the chest, disappear. You'll never hear from us again. No. I surprised myself with the word. You'll open that chest right now, show us everything. Then we'll decide what happens next. Nicole, Margaret pleaded. Those are the terms. Otherwise, Tom makes that call. Walter looked at his son, perhaps seeing him clearly for the first time. Not as the boy who worshipped him, but as the man who'd built something real while he'd built castles of sand. The key, he whispered, pulling the chain from his neck. It's all there, everything. As Tom took the key, Eleanor chuckled from her car. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone, she called. Sometimes it's about forcing them to face their own reflection. I watched Walter's shoulders cave as Tom approached the trunk, knowing that whatever we found inside would change everything. But maybe that was the point. Maybe some things needed to break before they could be rebuilt. The documents spread across our kitchen table like a map of betrayal. Bank statements, forged signatures, offshore accounts. Walter's life's work laid bare under the harsh fluorescent lights. Tom hadn't spoken in 20 minutes, just kept methodically sorting through papers, while Margaret sobbed quietly in the corner. These people, Tom finally said, holding up a list of names. They lost everything. Walter straightened his shoulders. They knew the risks. Did they? I picked up another document. Like how you forged these transfer authorizations, or how you backdated these contracts. You're missing the bigger picture. Walter reached for the papers, but I pulled them back. With these contacts, these relationships, we could rebuild. Rebuild what? Tom's voice cracked. More lies? More theft? Eleanor wheeled closer to the table, examining a document through her reading glasses. My late husband lost his pension to a scheme like this. The man responsible never faced consequences either. Something clicked in my mind. That's why you cut us off, isn't it? Not because I wasn't good enough for Tom. You were afraid we'd discover where your money really came from. Margaret lifted her tear-stained face. We were protecting you. By stealing from your grandson. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. By hiding in our home while planning to rob more people. I can fix this. Walter's desperation filled the room. Nicole, you're smart. You understand systems, organization. Help me sort these documents. Create a new strategy. Are you seriously? Tom started, but I held up my hand. Go on, Walter. He leaned forward, energy returning to his voice. These investors, they're still out there. With your skills, we could restructure the proposals, make everything legitimate this time. And the money you took from Mason's account. Seed funding. Once we're operational. Stop. I gathered the papers into a neat stack. You want my help? Here are my terms. First, you return every penny you took from Mason's fund. Second, you write a full confession about these documents, the fraud, all of it. Walter paled. That would ruin. You're already ruined. The question is whether you want to drag your son down with you. Thomas, Margaret pleaded. You can't let her. Let her what? Tom stood beside me. Protect our family. That's more than you ever did. I pulled out my phone, started taking photos of the documents. Walter lunged forward, but Eleanor's cane shot out, blocking his path. Careful, dear, she said sweetly. Assaulting a witness wouldn't help your case. What are you doing? Walter's voice shook. Insurance. I met his eyes. You have until morning to decide. Confession and restitution. Or these documents go to the FBI. You'd destroy your husband's family? No, Walter, you did that. I'm giving you a chance to save what's left of it. Margaret stood, smoothing her robe, with trembling hands. We could still be a family, if everyone just. We were never family to you. Tom's quiet words cut through her performance. We were just another asset to manage. I finished photographing the documents, then handed them back to Walter. Morning, Walter. Choose wisely. As they retreated to the guest room, Eleanor patted my hand. You're giving them more mercy than they deserve. It's not mercy. I watched Tom sink into a chair. The weight of decades of lies, crushing him. It's a chance for them to finally do one honest thing. And if they refuse, I thought of Mason, working part-time between classes, believing in the future we'd promised him. Thought of Tom, living with his parents' rejection all these years, without knowing the real reason. Then they learn what real consequences feel like. Tom looked up at me, his eyes clearing. Whatever they choose, we face it together this time. I squeezed his shoulder, hearing Walter and Margaret's urgent whispers from behind the guest room door. By morning, we'd know if they were capable of change, or if revenge would wear the face of justice. Eleanor started humming again as she wheeled toward the living room. The truth, she called over her shoulder, has a way of setting everyone free, whether they want it or not. Morning brought only silence from the guest room. No confession, no restitution, just an empty space where Walter and Margaret's car should have been. And a note on the kitchen counter. We're sorry it had to be this way. My phone buzzed, a bank alert. I nearly dropped it when I saw the balance. They'd cleaned out not just Mason's account, but our joint savings too. Everything we had. They're gone? Tom stood in the doorway, still in his sleep clothes, looking smaller somehow. They took everything. My voice sounded distant, hollow, all of it. The photos I'd taken of the documents refused to load. Deleted remotely somehow. Walter's technical skills hadn't completely abandoned him. The chest sat empty in the corner, mocking us. My phone rang, Mason's name lighting up the screen. I let it go to voicemail. How could I tell our son his grandparents had stolen his future? I'll call the police. Tom reached for his phone, but I grabbed his wrist. And tell them what? That we harbored criminals, that we knew about the fraud and didn't report it immediately, that we tried to blackmail them instead. Eleanor wheeled into the kitchen, her face grim. They've been planning this since they arrived. The chest, the documents, all theater to keep us distracted while they worked out how to access your accounts. I should have seen it. The realization hit like a physical blow. All those questions about our banking, Margaret reorganizing our files, Walter's late-night phone calls. Tom slumped into a chair. I trusted them, again, after everything. We both did. I picked up Margaret's note, fighting the urge to tear it to shreds. I thought giving them a chance to come clean would what? Eleanor's voice was gentle. Change decades of behavior. Some people only learn through consequences, dear. Mason's text came through. Card declined. Can't buy books for new semester. Everything okay? The room spun. All our careful planning, years of saving, destroyed in one night by people who saw us as nothing but a resource to exploit. There might be a way. Tom's voice was barely audible. I could sell the garage, take out loans, if we liquidate everything. No, the word came out sharp, final. We're not destroying what we built, not for them. Eleanor wheeled closer, took my hand. What's your plan? They think they've won, think we're powerless without proof. I pulled out my laptop, but they forgot something. What's that? Tom looked up. I'm a librarian. Documentation is what I do. I opened my email, found the message I'd sent to myself last night, scanned copies of every document, every statement, every piece of evidence. And I never keep just one copy. Nicole. Tom's voice wavered. If we do this, there's no going back. They'll go to prison. They made their choice. I started forwarding the files to the FBI's fraud division. Now I'm making mine. Eleanor nodded approvingly. Sometimes protecting your family means making the hardest choice. My finger hovered over the send button. Years of trying to prove myself worthy of their acceptance, of watching Tom struggle with their rejection, of building our life despite their judgment. It all came down to this moment. Mason called again. This time, I answered. Mom, what's going on? I looked at Tom, saw him nod slightly. Mason, honey, we need to talk about your grandparents, about your future, about everything. Is this about the account? Because I can get a job. No, my voice strengthened. This is about justice and family, and learning that sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who should have protected you. I pressed send on the email, feeling something break and rebuild inside me simultaneously. The revenge I'd imagined had transformed into something else. Not satisfaction, but a quiet, determined resolve to protect what mattered, no matter the cost. Come home, I told Mason. We'll face this together. Eleanor started humming her war song again, but this time it sounded less like victory and more like survival. The FBI caught up with Walter and Margaret at a luxury resort in Phoenix. Not in hiding, no, they were hosting a investment opportunity dinner for potential marks. Some habits die hard. I watched them being led into the courthouse. Margaret's designer outfit replaced by county orange. Walter's shoulders slumped beneath the weight of handcuffs. Tom stood beside me, his face unreadable. Ready? I squeezed his hand. They're still my parents. That's why we're here. The courtroom felt smaller than I'd imagined. Walter and Margaret's eyes widened when they saw us. A flash of something. Shame? Fear? Crossing their faces before their masks slipped back into place. Nicole. Walter's voice cracked as we approached. We can explain. Save it for the judge. But I sat down across from them. Tom taking the seat beside me. Though I'm curious how you'll explain stealing your grandson's future. Margaret leaned forward, her perfectly manicured hands clasped on the table. We were desperate. If you'd just helped us rebuild, like you helped us. Tom's quiet words cut through her excuses. When Mason was sick, when we needed you, that was different, because you had money then. I pulled out a folder, slid it across the table, or because you were too busy defrauding other families to care about your own. Walter's eyes fixed on the folder. What is that? Everything you left behind. Plus some interesting correspondence I found in the library's archived business records. I tapped the folder. You weren't just running a Ponzi scheme. You were targeting specific families. Ones with sick children, aging parents, desperate needs. Margaret's mask cracked. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I opened the folder, revealing photos of families, dozens of them. These people trusted you, like we trusted you, and you saw their desperation as an opportunity. We can make it right. Walter reached for my hand, but I pulled back. If you drop the charges, I have contacts. More lies? Tom stood abruptly. More schemes? Thomas, please. Margaret's tears started flowing. We're still family. Family. I laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet room. Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't manipulate and lie. And what? Walter's voice hardened. Judge us? After you set us up, trapped us with those photos, forced our hand. You trapped yourselves. Eleanor's voice made us all turn. She wheeled forward from where she'd been waiting quietly. Nicole just gave you enough rope to do it. Who's this? Margaret sniffed. Eleanor Jenkins. My grandmother smiled coldly. Remember that pension fund you emptied in '95? My husband's name was on it. He died thinking he'd failed to provide for his family. Walter paled. That wasn't personal. None of it was personal, was it? I stood, gathering the folder. Just business, opportunities, the same excuses you've always used to justify destroying lives. The prosecutor offered a deal. Tom finally spoke again. Full confession, return of assets, reduced sentence. You'd let us go to prison. Margaret's voice rose. Your own parents? No. I met their eyes. We're giving you one last chance to do the right thing. To show Mason that his grandparents have some shred of decency left. And if we refuse? Walter's businessman mask slipped back into place. I pulled out one final document. Then I submit this evidence of every fraud, every scheme, every victim, going back 30 years. No deals, no mercy. The silence stretched. Eleanor hummed softly, that same war song. But now it sounded like a requiem. Finally, Walter reached for a pen. You've won, Nicole. Are you happy? This isn't about winning. I watched him sign the confession. It's about justice. And maybe somewhere in there, redemption. As we left the courthouse, Tom stopped me. Was it worth it, using their own tactics against them? I thought about Mason, about the victims' families who would get restitution, about the weight lifting from Tom's shoulders. Sometimes, Eleanor said, wheeling ahead of us, the best revenge is forcing people to face their own reflection in the mirror you hold up. The sun felt warmer somehow, the future clearer. Not because we'd won, but because we'd chosen truth over lies, justice over revenge, family, real family, over facades. The prison visiting room smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Walter sat across from me, his orange jumpsuit a far cry from his tailored suits. He slid an envelope across the table. What's this? I didn't touch it. Mason's college fund, plus interest. His voice was different now, humbler, or maybe just tired. I liquidated some overseas accounts the FBI hadn't found yet. Why? Because you were right. He glanced at the guard, then back to me. About everything. I thought about the restitution hearings, the parade of families telling their stories, Eleanor holding my hand as each one spoke, her quiet strength keeping me from drowning in their pain. Margaret won't see me anymore, Walter said. Says I betrayed her by confessing. And did you? No. He smiled slightly. I betrayed her by believing we were above consequences. By thinking our name meant more than our actions. I picked up the envelope, felt its weight. Mason's graduating next month, top of his class. I know, I read about it in the alumni newsletter. Pride and regret warred in his voice. He's everything we pretended to be. Successful, respected, honest. He asks about you sometimes. Walter's hands trembled. What do you tell him? The truth. That his grandparents made mistakes, but they're trying to make amends. Are we? He leaned forward. Or am I just trying to buy back what I lost? I stood, tucking the envelope into my bag. That's something you'll have to figure out during your sentence. Nicole. His voice stopped me. That chest, did you ever wonder what else was in it? Does it matter? There was a photo from Thomas's wedding day. I used to take it out sometimes. Look at how happy he was, how much we lost by being too proud to accept his choices. He cleared his throat. You were beautiful that day. Goodbye, Walter. Outside, Tom waited by the car. How'd it go? I handed him the envelope. He's different, smaller. Mom's still refusing visits, says she'll die before admitting she was wrong. He opened the envelope, eyes widening. This is for Mason, from the grandfather who's trying to learn what family really means. Eleanor was waiting at home, Mason helping her prepare dinner. The house smelled of her famous pot roast, the same recipe she'd taught me when Tom and I first married, when we were too poor for anything but tough cuts of meat. Well, she asked as we entered. I hung up my coat, remembering the empty corner where Walter's chest had sat. We'd donated it to the library's historical collection. A reminder that some treasures are worthless, and some wounds can become wisdom. He's healing, I said, or trying to. Mason looked up from chopping vegetables. Think they'll ever understand what they lost? Margaret won't, Tom answered. But Dad, maybe. Eleanor wheeled to the table, arranging plates with precise movements. Revenge is easy, she said. Redemption takes courage. I watched my family, the one we'd built, not the one we'd inherited, moving around the kitchen in comfortable harmony. The weight of Walter's choices, Margaret's pride, and my own anger felt lighter somehow. Mom? Mason held out a stack of plates. Help me set the table. As I took them, I noticed he was using Margaret's expensive china, the set she'd left behind in her rush to escape. We'd kept it not as a trophy, but as a reminder that value isn't in things, but in how we use them. Perfect for family dinner, I said. Eleanor started humming her war song, but this time it sounded different, not like victory, or survival, or revenge, but like healing, like forgiveness. Not for them, maybe, but for us. Tom caught my eye across the kitchen and smiled. The real smile. The one that had made me fall in love with him, despite his family's disapproval. In it, I saw everything we'd protected, everything we'd built, everything we'd become. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes, it's simply living well, loving deeply, and leaving the door open just enough for redemption to find its way home. If it ever does.